You're getting chased. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, in fields.
Yeah.
Quite thick fields.
Through nettles. You know, it's like there is...
Without any clothes on.
Yeah, there was definitely some moments where you're like, what, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's a movie, guys. You don't have to go full speed. They'll speed it up in post.
I was, I was like, I can't remember the last time I ran this much.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome to another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Are you ready to talk 28 years later? I always am ready to talk about this movie, this franchise, a really exciting event recorded for your eyes and ears with Danny Boyle, with Jodie Comer, and Aaron Taylor-Johnson. That's the main event on Happy, Sad, Confused today. Okay, before we get to this conversation, and this is a really cool one, reminder, check out our Patreon. That's where you get the early access, the discount codes. We always have live events. We've been doing a lot of them lately. You get priority seating and all that kind of fun stuff. Check it out. Patreon.com/happysadconfused. I thank you in advance for even checking it out and seeing if it makes sense for you. Because if you do support us over there, honestly, it helps us make more stuff over here. All right. I've talked about in the past my love of 28 Days Later, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I've talked about my love of 28 Weeks Later, but that's an underrated sequel, by the way. Finally now, though, we are ready to talk about 28 years later. Danny Boyle is back. It's been many years, I think 23 years since he made this iconic first film in this now trilogy. That film revolutionized filmmaking, the way it was shot, the way it launched Cillian Murphy, the way it kind of reinterpreted the quote-unquote zombie genre. And I am pleased to say, I am pleased to report 28 years later is fantastic. I love this movie. I'm in love with this movie. It is scary. It is emotional. It features some of my favorite actors. And when Danny Boyle is cooking, there are a few filmmakers that can compare, and I think he's really cooking with this one. This is an event we did at the 92nd Street Y, one of my live events there. We shot this actually a couple weeks back. It was pretty early on. Nobody had really seen the movie yet. I was very lucky enough that they screened it for me quite early. So I felt like I had this like secret weighing on me. But the nature of this conversation is such that it's kind of the Danny Boyle show, and that's fine by me because Danny, not only a great filmmaker, he's like Quentin Tarantino level of talking about filmmaking. Unbelievable. And Jodie and Aaron, who I love, I think we're like a little bit like, how much can we say? What can we say? But they are delightful. They've been on the pod before, of course. I always love catching up with them. But I don't know, sit back and enjoy because this is a fun one, especially for Danny and his enthusiasm and his insight into filmmaking and returning to this franchise now. So check out the conversation, see the movie, most importantly, see the movie because I need to see, they're trying to make 3 of these. They've already made 2. They made the sequel already, the sequel to the sequel to the sequel. But then Danny intends to come back and direct a 3rd part of this new trilogy, and I need that movie in my life. So I have a vested interest in you guys going out and seeing this movie. It's got the coveted Horowitz seal of approval. So I take you now to the 92nd Street Y, a conversation live on stage with Aaron Taylor-Johnson, with Jodie Comer, and with one of my favorite filmmakers, the great Danny Boyle. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Hi. How's it going? I'm Josh Horowitz, and welcome to a very special night at the 92nd Street Y, everybody. This is a very special live taping of Happy, Sad, Confused, my podcast, and I am so excited to say that we're going to be talking about my most anticipated film of the year, which I've seen. And it's amazing, guys. 28 years later does not disappoint. But 23 years ago, 28 Days Later came out, and it shocked, I think, the world. It redefined horror. It introduced many of us to Cillian Murphy. It proved once again that Danny Boyle can do anything. And we've waited long and hard for Danny to come back to this, and he's come back to it not only as a director, but with Alex Garland in tow as the writer once again. And you guys are in for a real treat. We're going to show this audience here in New York some exclusive footage that has not been shown virtually anywhere else, so you're in the right place. And we've also got the two leads of this film that are no slouches. They're pretty amazing actors. I'm so thrilled to welcome to the 92nd Street Y, give it up, give a warm welcome to Aaron Taylor Johnson, to Jodie Comer. Jodie Comer, come on out. And to director Danny Boyle, everybody, come on out.
Very nice.
Guys, this movie rocks. Congratulations. So, Danny, I haven't told you this to your face yet, but this movie, yes, it scared me. I've told Jodie and Aaron this. This movie made me cry, Danny.
Yeah.
This is an emotional movie. This is going to shock audiences. Does it please you to know that were those two of the operative rules for you to make an audience feel in both those directions?
I think that's why they're not showing it generally, because I think they want to, they know there's a horror crowd that might feel compromised if they feel it's too emotional.
I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. You're not going to cry.
Yeah, no, but it's silly. It's wonderful that you're here. Thank you for coming. But you know, in the first film, there's a bit that people remember where Brendan Gleeson gets the blood in the eye and he tries to protect his daughter from this terror inside him. And he says, stay away. And it's very emotional. Yeah. It's like, whoa. And you get that with this family. Well, you've seen it, so... and I think they want to, but they want the fans to keep thinking it's just horror and rather than some... But yes, we were very aware that it would be a very emotional experience that you go through as well as a horror film as well in many ways. And why shouldn't the two exist side by side? I mean, it is amazing horror as a genre, isn't it? Since time immemorial, really, since movies. It's a genre that keeps reinventing itself and keeps adding, and apparently, I don't know whether this is true, but I was told that one of the reasons it's getting a resurgence now is because more and more women are going to it. Whereas it used to be, certainly when we made the first film, it was all about, no women will ever come and see this film.
Right.
It's a boys' medium.
Right.
But now apparently, and certainly we did some test screenings, and the women in the audience at the test screenings, in the focus group they hold back at the end, were really articulate about its place, how they saw it, how it fitted in and things like that. Yeah.
Jodie, would you like to speak on behalf of all women? Do you like...
Always.
Always.
Not like that pressure.
No, talk to me a little bit about, you both have seen the film now, and it's one thing to shoot a film, you never know how it's going to turn out. Just give me emotionally, intellectually, what was it like? Aaron, what did it feel like to watch this finished product for the first time?
I really don't want to be the one spoiling anything, and so it might be a bit cryptic. Cryptic. It's a good job I'm not talking about it then. Cryptic, yeah. Yes, it's Danny Boyle doing, filmmaking at its finest. It's an extraordinary experience, and I don't want to share too much, but I think you're going to be so surprised. You're going to walk in with one feeling and be completely, you're not expecting to walk out feeling the way you do. And I think it's more than, it's interesting to be, and it's so unique to be a part of something like this when you've got a movie like 28 Days Later that came out over 20 years ago, and to have lived through that when that came out, and that was such a shocking, iconic movie of its time, and then to play in this world. And then for Jodie and I, we're a family. We have our young son who we're trying to help navigate through this post-apocalyptic world. And so, it's a lot about dark and light and where's to find the hope in the darkness. Yeah. And I felt there's so much that you can relate to in that, and there's empathy in that. And I think that's why it's so, this world that Danny and Alex Garland created. I mean, Alex Garland is such a genius. I mean, the material that we worked from was exceptional. I mean, you read the script and it was like, these characters, came off the page. So, and then to be in Danny's hands was amazing. So it's special, but
it's a special one.
Come see the movie. Yeah.
Just to add to that as well, I think from I know very little about filmmaking, but even, to realize actually how much filmmaking has advanced within the past 23 years and how the film 28 years later has still stayed so true to its form, but has like broken even more molds and even more barriers. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so cinematic and yet incredibly intimate and still so singular and original and surprising. You really get to see how Danny and Alex and everyone have kind of...
Same DP as the first time.
Of course, Anthony Dod Mantle.
Right?
Yeah, like, it's exquisite.
What are the lessons learned from, I'm sure folks here remember how groundbreaking that film was. You chose to shoot 28 days later on DV cameras, and it had a verite style that was very unusual for the time. Like, what were the lessons learned that you applied here? Because you can't imitate, you can't do exactly what you did then. You want to utilize the technologies now in a different way. How did that experience inform filmically how you were going to approach this one?
So one of the tensions that always exists is that cinematographers and the industry generally want the story to look perfect. There's this feeling of perfection and that's being chased, and everybody's contributing to it. And in a way, it's trying with stories like this. For me, that feels inappropriate. That you feel like they shouldn't be perfect. They should be, if you're lucky, they should be extraordinary looking, but you're looking at a post-apocalyptic world. It's not perfect. Right. And it's got much damage in it. There's damage and danger in it and fracture in it. And it's that you're trying to get at. And that's, I think, the real reason that we don't use conventional cameras. Because they do give you perfection these days. What they can achieve is extraordinary. And you're trying to find an edge in it somewhere that will take it away from that, but still be exhilarating to watch on a big screen, if you can. And we got away with it on the first film, because like in some of the shots, the wide shots of Cillian walking around London, he's basically 2 green pixels when you look at it, and we just managed to cut away from it in time before people started demanding their money back. And now, of course, technology's moved on so much, so the phones in your pockets will shoot 4K, right, which is what films are shot at anyway. They don't tend to record at 4K because your cloud storage would be enormous, but you can set them to record at 4K, and they will do, So the technology is extraordinary. And it did throw up interesting questions, which is like, if our path, we generally think we're improving, don't we? Give or take, obviously, certain things that we may think are not improving.
No, society is perfect, Dan. I don't know what you're talking about.
Generally speaking, you feel like there's basically a move forward. But if it gets interrupted, what happens to you? And is that just linked to technology? Because that's the biggest difference, isn't it, between the society that existed before this 28 thing and after it, which is there's no technology, the electricity's gone, and they can't use any. That was really interesting. There is a scene in it late on where you're slightly confronted with that, where the kid who is he's an analog native, he asks this guy, "What's that?" And you kind of realise he just
didn't grow up with,
he just doesn't have any experience of that. Anyway,
so I want to talk about the story in a second as much as we can, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the technology for you guys. Like, how does it affect your performance based on the kind of camera, where the camera is, the style this was shot? Does it affect performance, or does it not matter where the camera is acting's acting, or what?
I found it to be incredibly playful. There was something amazing about witnessing the communication with Danny and Anthony, our DOP, and them both being very instinctive, and Anthony would often be very, very close, and he'd also be like, I'm going to be here, but if you do something that I feel like I want to lean into, I'm going to follow you, So there's just like a constant awareness, it feels like, as a team of like moving as one, which was amazing, and it kept it all very kind of very alive and in the moment. It was a way in which I'd never ever worked before, which was so much fun. But yeah, or like the camera would be like swinging off a wire, or like it'd be on someone's back, or you just be like, wow, what's gonna happen next?
Or probably sometimes even in your face,
right?
Like Aaron, for you, like when a camera is that close.
Yeah, it informed quite a lot, and it definitely at times made you feel it was invasive, so it made you feel quite vulnerable. It's like the way someone would film you now with an iPhone or something like that makes you feel like you can't hide. There's a lot that's, and I think that's something like what Danny was saying. When you have a different camera, a different setup, there's the sense of you kind of know. You've been trained, I suppose, to sort of know your light and where your mark is and all that, and they sort of stripped all that away. So you felt like there was no safety net in that respect. So it was very raw, and like Jodie mentioned, like Anthony, our DP, was very much. It was instinctive, and it kept everything spontaneous, because he can go from here to like there, to, and then come from different angles. It just feels like this thing was like
it made me so
excited
excited to watch it, actually, because I was like, I actually don't have no idea how these shots are going to look. That's another reason why I couldn't wait to sit down and watch it, because I thought, wow, I really want to see how this is.
Yeah, absolutely. There was something that was. I've never really worked on anything where I was like as excited to go, and I want to see what we did, and working with Danny and what we were doing on this movie, because it was bold. It was like Danny as a filmmaker is so bold and making, and it was new and different and experimental, and it meant that we could explore. And you were trying all new things, and you even said some things I don't even know if they're going to work, but we're going to do it anyway. And I was like, that's so so refreshing. It was so refreshing. Every day going to work was like the enthusiasm that you got from Danny just lit up every day of like being back in like your craft again in a way that you were on your toes. Yeah,
the cliche is you expect a filmmaker to get more conservative, go to the tried and true. But this in your DNA, Danny, you were incapable of doing that.
But it's interesting. So Bertolucci, the great Italian filmmaker, said you should always leave a door open on your set, because the danger with sets is that you're sealed and you kind of know what you're doing, or you think you know what you're doing, and everybody knows what they're doing, and you're and he said you should always, I always remember that, you should let there should be a door open where things come in that you've no idea how to handle necessarily, and they become part of it. And that can be a mental thing for the actors, that something happens to them that changes the way they see a scene, or it can be a technical thing, like an ingredient within a scene. Like there's a couple of scenes, there's one scene where Aaron is running at the end. You'll have seen it in the trailer where he shouts at the end, "Spike!" And we gave him this camera to run and see if he could run with it like that. And we'd no idea whether it would capture anything. But you get this moment of him unleashed, and it's kind of gets through a kind of barrier of prettiness or perfection, and it's kind of rawer, really. And there's a great bit of there's these characters called the Alphas in it, and we had a great guy called Chai Lewis Parry, and he does it in this train sequence, and it's like, whoa, it's quite scary.
Okay, I want to tease the audience a little bit as much as we can about the storyline. You've done it a little bit already, Danny, but folks like me have been asking you and Alex for over a decade, for 20 years, about a sequel. There was a sequel 28 Weeks Later, which is a fine movie, but you and Alex have not returned. No, I think I legitimately like that movie. But you and Alex have chosen, or maybe, I don't know if it was an active choice or you couldn't crack the story. How did you crack this? Because there was talk it was going to be 28 months later. This is how long this has been going.
Yeah.
How did it arrive at 28 years later in this particular storyline?
Well, I mean, it's true. It's not vainglorious saying it. It's crowds that change it, because most of the films you make fade away. They kind of like, even if they've been a hit, they kind of like, and if they've not been a hit, they really fade away, and you kind of like, and you never hear of them again, and they kind of and that's as it should be. But this one stuck around 28 days later, and there'd be odd screenings like this where people, and you'd be asked to go along and do a Q&A, and you realize there's a bunch of people who really enjoy the film and want it to. So because of that, we talked about it occasionally about whether we should return to it. And we did come up with this idea. It's a very good script that Alex wrote about weaponizing the virus. And it's what you'd expect, though. It's about a government or a nefarious corporation or a military entity weaponizes the virus. You know, and you go, yeah, I've seen that before. It's alien, isn't it? You go, yeah. And it didn't get any traction between us. And then he went away and he came back with a much bigger idea where we withdrew from Europe. Because in the 28 weeks later, you see the virus approaching Paris.
Right.
And we decided to do away with that and to actually, that Europe, the UN, the EU, whoever you call them, had managed to contain it within the UK only and had been left quarantined to die out, hopefully. And that was the key, I think, because it allowed Alex to write a much, ironically, in containing it like that, it allowed him to write a much bigger story, which arcs across 3 films, ultimately. That's the ambition. And we've shot 2 of them. And one of them was still looking for finance. So there'll be a QR code if you leave, which will be, honestly, not a one. Honestly, you'll all write to Tom Rothman at and persuade him to give us the money. And it was to eventually, but each film stands alone, and it stands alone. You can watch it without knowing the first film as well. And they each, and it was a bigger idea, ironically. You think the palette is smaller, but it's actually bigger because of that.
It is. It's that simultaneously large canvas, and yet it is also an intimate story of family. It is about this family. The actor that's not with us that we should mention is this wonderful young actor, Alfie, who plays Spike, who plays your son in this. And it's truly his coming of age. It's a coming of age story. He goes through a rite of passage, essentially, where it's fair to say that, as he explores the outer world. I know we can't say too much about your characters, but this is kind of a change of pace for you, Jodie. I've never seen you. You played a lot of very self-possessed, together, strong characters, and this is a woman struggling. This is a woman mentally and physically struggling.
Yeah.
What are the unique challenges of playing Isla for you here?
The uniqueness about Isla was that she's got a lot going on inwardly, which in a way kind of saves her from a lot of knowledge that everyone else has about the dangers of the outside world, yet she has a lot of inner turmoil. But her North Star is her son, and she kind of clings to him and that. And they have a really, really beautiful relationship. But again, it's a journey film, and the characters go a long way. So it was kind of mentally plotting that out with the condition that she's in and trying to figure that out. And there's an interesting dynamic between the two of them because of the position that she's in. So it was working with little Alfie and discovering that family dynamic. We did like 2 weeks rehearsal in Newcastle before we started, didn't we? And we got to go through every scene and map it out and map out any beats that felt important, or what Alfie felt he needed in each moment. And that was invaluable because it was like we could then get to set and feel like we had actually really created a family dynamic and a family history, even though you don't see any of that. It was something that we could all kind of hold on to, and especially for Alfie to hold on to. Yeah. For
you, Aaron, most of your scenes are with this young actor. And it's a complicated relationship. Talk to me a little bit about establishing that bond. Why was it important to connect, or how was it important to connect with this young actor on this one? So
there's a lot of connection. Now, Alfie was, this is his kind of first movie, right? It's his first movie. He's the lead of this movie. And he is absolutely tremendous in this movie. He's sublime. And I'm so proud of him, what his journey and his arc is in this movie. But he embodies it physically and also emotionally. He's tremendous. But I felt like, not just me, I felt like we all felt this weird sort of duty to, I felt like I had this paternal sort of connection to him anyway, and I wanted that to come across. But I feel like we also felt like we wanted to sort of mentor him through making a movie on this scale, and the sort of, the stamina you need to get through this sort of a movie. And then I have my moment with him. Jodie, then it's sort of, we pass the baton, with him, and Jodie has her moment with him, and then there's a couple of other characters that appear in this movie. And so he has had, you know, had the gift of sort of being amongst us all, but, you know, Danny being, you know, sort of puppeteering him through everything has been extraordinary. And he's a special, special boy, and he's absolutely amazing in this movie. And there was a lot of love. I wanted them to have a bond and have a lot of love and connection, because my character is putting a lot of pressure on him to be a bit of a man in a moment, and maybe I'm projecting too much onto him, and he's still a child, and you know, and it's just so beautiful to sort of see in this.
I know, I'm excited to see him come of age, both as a character and as an actor, because it's a rite of passage in both respects for this young man, right? There's so much in there. That's everything I love about what Danny Boyle does, for the record. It's the energy, it's the emotion, it's the music, it's all of it together. You do it like nobody else, sir. Can you talk to me a little bit about, like, I see that clip, that opening, and there are like 5 images that will haunt me for a long time. Do you ever start with an image and kind of build out a sequence from that? How does it evolve for you? How do you find like the iconic imagery that ends up in your film?
So that it was Teletubbies, really. Because, exactly, yeah, you just like, it's that connective tissue. Straight away you go, Teletubbies. It's like, and I remember, I was involved in the Olympic opening ceremony in London, and we designed this set, and the press got photographs of it, and they said it looks like, and we did these press conferences, and the journalist said, it looks like a Teletubbies set. And they said it like it was a bad thing. And I remember saying to them, is that a bad thing? And they thought it was. They thought it was, we're going to be described as a... So I've always loved the Teletubbies. And it's like, and when you brought up kids, you kind of get attachment. You know, some of you will know what it's like. You get attachment to different parts of kids' entertainment, whether it's Power Rangers or Teletubbies or whatever. And they do come back. You'll be glad to know. And there is something happens in the mind of that kid that's just mind-blowing in Alex's writing. What is happening to that kid's mind as he quotes this religious, you know, because we know that's Christ's last words on the cross, and there's something going on there that you see a bit later, and then certainly in the second film, which has already been shot with Nia DaCosta. So it's kind of it's in the writing, but it was also in the innocence of what it suggests, and then the girls, and that was very difficult to cast those girls, and they're very difficult to direct kids, to direct fear in them, because that's when you get very close to being, you've got to be very careful as a director, because you're trying, obviously, if you want them to look frightened, and yet you're introducing, and some of them don't know fear. And why should they? They're 7. You know, you think that's wonderful, they don't know fear, but I've got to introduce them to it. and there was the little girl who covers her eyes at the front, and she was like, she seemed confident at first. And we kept saying, you know, these guys are going to come in, and it's all pretend and make-believe, and their parents or their minders were there, and everything was like that. And I had one of the cameras behind the television, and they all said, we're fine, we want to do it, and everything like that. So it was all, and you just think, well, am I doing the right thing, and everything like that. And what she did, and you can see the beginning of it there very, very quickly, is just as they hit the door, she knew to get out of the way, and she literally jumped like this over the television into my lap like this, and said, I kid you not, she said, Danny, save me. And I felt I was crushed for the rest of the day, because you realise, and anyway, they were all fine, and we talked, and they'll come we're doing a little premiere in Newcastle, which is where we shot a lot of the film, and they'll come, but sorry about that, Josh.
No, I have my own kind of trauma I'm dealing with now.
But it's innocence, and you wanted to, because of course we knew going into it the studio would want us to do a recap of the first film,
right,
or the first 2 films, and we didn't want to do that. So we thought, how can we write a sequence that kind of gives you a reminder of what it was, and also introduces this idea of innocence and introduces this character who comes back as a man later on in the film. So that was the idea of it. Yeah.
So we know it's tough for kids to portray fear. What about adult actors? Of all the emotions, is it tough to like portray sustained fear throughout a film among other emotions?
I think it is. I remember you saying that you enjoyed it the most because it's an emotion that you can't fake. Like, you have to go there in order for it to be believable and the audience to be with you. I feel like you spend a lot of the time hyperventilating, or in these, and you will kind of come down from a take, and there might be a reset, and you luckily have a little bit of time to reconfigure. But there's one shot where like I feel like something wasn't visibly there that I could see, so I had to pretend it was, and I'm like, oh boy, I really overhand I took the fear too far. I don't know if there's a danger of that sometimes, but it's intense. It's really high energy. I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For you, Aaron, I mean, like, you've done obviously physically intense roles. Is it slightly different though? Like, this is more emotional. It is physical, but it's also just emotional intensity for you as an actor, I would imagine.
I think, it goes back to Danny creating an environment that just feels authentic, and I think it's about the stakes. I think about the character, what have they really got to lose in the stakes that they've, and the situation they've put themselves in. So it's more about that.
The stakes feel so high from the get-go as well.
Yeah.
From those moments with you and Alfie. That's what I really felt. I was like, there isn't a beat from the beginning where you're like, you don't feel how high those stakes are.
No, there's dread hanging over this film. You're just waiting for the shit to hit the fan, basically, this entire film. And it happens multiple times. I do want to talk about music. It's so important to all of your work. Is there music on set? Is there, like, how do you create the musical landscape for something like this?
No, we get a playlist together.
Yeah.
Kind of, just like you do, and Spotify or Apple or whatever, and you get a playlist together, and then you share it with people. Sometimes you give it to the actors. Sometimes you ask the actors for their tunes, if they've got tunes that things. So there is music that you can talk about rather than, because it's so difficult to talk about music.
Yeah.
It's far better just to play it and play music. And so it's mostly in the editing. And we got this amazing band from Edinburgh called the Young Fathers, who are a bunch. If you've never heard their music, listen to their music. They are wonderful. They're like a kind of rap version of the Beach Boys, but from a really tough area of Edinburgh, some really rough estates, and they're most beautiful three blokes. They're just gorgeous, and they just started contributing music to it, and the music's beautiful. And they wrote this tune for towards the end, which is very emotional. I think the stuff that Josh was talking about, and that's very beautiful. That's quite special. So we were very pleased with that. But you have to trust them.
Yeah.
And you've got to trust musicians, because often the business doesn't. It's kind of like thinks it can manipulate them, or thinks it can just take the best bits of them and then do the rest.
Right. Or imitate this, as opposed to give someone free rein to kind of create something.
You've got to trust them, because they speak a language that reaches you in a way that we can't. They just do. And it's unspoken, and it's out there, and it's an amazing part of the process for me. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the process. Yeah.
Did either of you have an inspired 28 years later playlist to help you get in the zone of sustained fear?
I did. Mine wasn't really to sustain fear, though. Mine was more, I guess, an emotional connection to Spike.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to recall the songs on it now, but I do quite enjoy that when I come to a new character, is making a little playlist, even just of like 10 songs, just for like emotion kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't think it reveals too much that first trailer, and the second trailer also has it, the Rudyard Kipling poem, Boots. Like, amazing. Just amazing. Sets the mood. It's in the movie as well. How did you arrive at that? Was that in the script process, or did that come in the editing, or?
No, so the guy, there's a guy at Sony, I'm sure he's part of a big team, a guy at Sony, and this is the story we heard. They put it in the first trailer, and when Alex and I heard it, we thought, That is amazing. Yeah. And we were developing a sequence where the Holy Island survivors, of which this is part of the family, one of the ways that they organize their lives is that they have retrenched, they look backwards. But once the technology stops, rather than keep progressing, which you could argue theoretically you could without technology, they don't. They look backwards to a better time in England, which for a lot of people is post-war. The feeling of the 50s where life was simpler, you know, and there was deprivation, rations, etc. But people were honest, you know, and there's that romanticism about it, and they do that. Right. And we wanted a way to represent that and connect it with their training that they were giving the young men. And it's interesting, they don't train the girls, because again, they've retrenched back to that process before we evolved into better people. They went backwards like that. And they're not bad people, but they just went back there, subsistence farming, training the boys to be fighters, to protect the island, which is part of the process of the story. And Boots became a wonderful soundtrack for that. Yeah, so... it's and it also gave us an excuse. We cut in at one point Laurence Olivier as Henry V. And so it's a chance for, we've all got a credit now with a Laurence Olivier.
No, you've worked with the greats. What's a typical Danny Boyle direction? If only he had some enthusiasm. As we can tell, he's a very calm man.
But that's the beauty about Danny, is like, there is so much energy and passion and excitement in what he does, because he loves what he does. So I feel like whenever Danny would come to you with a note, he's often expressing what he wants you to, or not even like what he's not showing you what he wants you to do, but he's feeling the emotion in which is in the scene. Yeah. And that's, I think, is so beautiful, because you feel like he's proper in there with you, or sometimes you'll kind of watch him, not when you're acting, but like if you catch him watching the monitor at some point when maybe you're off camera and he's just like glued in, you know, there's not a beat that he isn't considering or not taking note of. But yeah, I think I feel that you're a very, very emotionally intelligent man, and with a real sensitivity and a real intellect. That was my experience, I would say, on this job.
I want to mention also, not only the evolution of this kind of isolated society that's fascinating in this film, it's the evolution of the infected that I find very interesting, that I think people are going to be fascinated by. Yeah. They've gone in different ways, basically. There are some that have been to the gym and are really working out, they're really scary, and there's some that have let themselves go a little bit, and I think they're equally scary for me. How did you arrive at that? I guess, do you just sort of like you and Alex think out, okay, how would this go down? How to extrapolate from 28 years? It
was very serious, because the authorities, the EU, UN, whoever is the military who are quarantining the island of the UK, are imagining it will die out. But that's a complete mistake. It's nature. It's a part of nature, just like anything. And it will evolve. And it will survive. It's not just a story of survival of the people on the Holy Island who are survivors we recognize as being like us. Everything else survives as well, and it finds ways to survive rather than let itself be burnt out. So one of the big things was the amount of energy that's needed to be a rage infected is enormous. The calories you're burning up are just phenomenal. So you think, well, they'll starve to death straight away. So you go, yes, they would, unless they survive, so they hunt, right? Of course, to eat, to survive. Except some of them do it differently. They expend no energy at all, and they live on the ground. The people you're talking about being out of condition, and they eat grubs and worms and things like that. And then others evolve, and it's more like the virus acts like a steroid on them, and they evolve into the leaders of the hunters, if you see what I mean. So it becomes a kind of hierarchy in a way, and you realize, you get little glimpses, you think they're a bit organized in a way. Because 28 years is, obviously it's a ridiculous amount of time for that kind of evolution to have taken place, but once you accept that it's just a period where evolution is seen to happen and it's accelerated for our purposes.
For you guys, again, this gets back to what you keep saying, Aaron, about sort of like the set that he creates, like being in that environment and seeing these folks in that amazing makeup must be like, okay, I'm in Danny Boyle's 28 years later. This is 30% of the job right now. Now I know where I'm at. What was it like to sort of see, I don't know, this amazing makeup job done?
Our prosthetic team was...
Yeah, they were brilliant, yeah.
Who are the names, do you know?
John Nolan.
John Nolan,
And his studio, they were
yeah.
Victoria.
Because they were absolutely, they were terrifying, actually, yeah.
Also, they're often like stunt performers. They run at full speed. Nobody's slowing down for you. Like, you're getting chased. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, in fields.
Yeah.
Quite thick fields.
Through nettles. You know, it's like
Without any clothes on.
Yeah, there was definitely some moments where you're like, what, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's a movie, guys. You don't have to go full speed. They'll speed it up in post.
I was like, I can't remember the last time I ran this much. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some pretty terrifying infected out there, but there was some of the prosthetics on the
Flow lip.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, unlike the ones that
I'm
aren't very
terrified
well
to say
conditioned, as you put it.
Yes.
That like to eat the grubs along the floor, which you've said, so that's okay. We're terrified when we get stuff backstage, but hats off to those individual actors who were willing to be in those the prosthetics. So for a whole day and out in the cold and things like that, it was. Yeah, it's a whole other level. That's a whole other kind of dedication that actors can do that in a way, because it's and feel because you can feel incredibly vulnerable, of course, in the way that we're performing. But
it's so true. Actually, you really do have to have an element of fearlessness in there. It's such a good point. Some people were like in the chair for like 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
But amazing as well to think of like that they have advanced or regressed in different ways. Like just that detail is.
I'm thinking specifically of this one girl and who had her eyes completely stitched up and stuff like that. Like there was some uncomfortable situations. Yeah. Sounds awful. It was terrible, right? And she just was like.
She was amazing.
She got on with it, and that's kind of crazy.
So you have teased that already the second film has been shot by another great filmmaker, Nia DaCosta.
Yeah.
There is an intention to do a third. Can you hint a little bit about the scope of this story? So we can say this for the record, Cillian Murphy is not in this film. We love Cillian Murphy. He is an executive producer.
He is indeed. And I've been told that to say to you.
You are your own man. Say what you want to say, Danny.
I know, it's not as simple as that. No, I've been told to say to you that good things come to those who wait. Okay. There are many good things associated with Cillian, and there's a handover technique. Although the films sit and exist individually, as you hope to be satisfying stories on the home, within each one is a handover sequence, which Josh has seen, where these characters are introduced, and that happens in the second film. And then if we get the money, Tom Rothman at tomrothmans.com. If we get the money, Cillian will obviously be a dominant factor in the third part of the film. But the story arc is worked out, as Alex has very carefully worked out. So we're just poised, really. I mean, it's, you know what it is. They're just waiting to see what business it does, really.
Has it been, I would imagine, as an executive producer, he's been part, at least to some extent, of creative discussions. I mean, you met this man at a much younger age, and now to be collaborating with him, coming off this Oscar win, it's very telling that coming off an Oscar win, like, he wanted to prioritize working with you guys and coming back.
I know, that's very nice, and it's lovely, and he's a great guy, and he's smashing, and he was very complimentary about the film, and so we were very, it'll be good, I think. Yeah.
Of course, a lot has changed in the world in the last 23 years. There was a pandemic, I don't know if you heard, there was a pandemic. How does that inform this film, you think? It has to impact the storyline.
It does in obvious ways, and it's sort of, but it did something in less obvious ways, which is that, you know, it wasn't just like the shock of the pandemic, it was the way that we got used to it. Because I remember thinking, if you were, like in the first film, everybody was so cautious about getting infected. It was like, did the blood get on you? It was like, and if it did get on you, I'll hatchet you to death. And it was like, everybody's like this. But you can't exist like that for 28 years. It's exhausting. You're dead anyway.
Right.
So they kind of, it's like anything, like humanity behaves like that.
Yeah.
You begin to become not casual, not relaxed about it, but you begin to take more risks. There's kind of a slight latitude. So we built that into it. It felt like, you know, that anyway, it's weird thinking like that. But that's what the experience of COVID did when you go through that experience. Because I remember when COVID started and the groceries were delivered, I used to put blue gloves on to take them in at the door. And when I look back on that, I think, what was I doing? What was I doing? And I'd get the groceries in and I'd rub bleach on them like this, on the plastic containers that the lettuce was in. It's insane. So, and obviously you relax after that initial panic stage.
Right.
And anyway, so stuff like that works its way in.
I want to mention one other actor we haven't mentioned yet. Ralph Fiennes. No surprise to anybody, is amazing in this film.
Yeah.
Amazing in this film. A very unusual, fascinating character. I don't know, can any of you just talk a little bit about working with one of the all-time greats and what he brings to set?
This is so good. It's what I think is beautiful about his character is what he's providing the characters in the film, you as an audience feel yourself. There's just this really, I don't know, this kind of magic happens when you're watching the movie. He kind of, I don't want to say too much, but he gives the most incredible performance, but he kind of provides the audience with exactly what he's providing the characters, which you really need. Come that time, guys. Yeah.
And he is, I mean, you guys, I know I've seen the trailers, like, I mean, from the outside in, I was like expecting a kind of a Colonel Kurtz figure, like a madman, and he is mad in his own way, but in another way seems to be the most rational person we find in this story.
He also, again, it's quite difficult this, he represents something in England that's really important to us. Yeah.
I hope this wasn't cruel for you guys to tease you guys for this movie for an hour, but as you can tell, it's very special, and this is a special group of actors, and it's so exciting to see Danny do what he does best in this genre like nobody else. I'm going to thank you guys, and as we go out tonight, we're going to treat you guys to a 5-minute sequence from 28 years later. But before we do all that, give it up one more time for Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Jodie Comer, Danny Boyle. The movie is out June 20th. We're going to set up the GoFundMe for the third film. We're going to make it happen from hell or high water. Please. Thank you guys so much.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.